I write a blog on influence and persuasion, and it's called Influence People. People actually stands for something. Powerful everyday opportunities to persuade that are lasting and ethical. Now, I also chose that name because I like to tell people that we don't try to persuade things. I can't, if it snows tomorrow, I can't go out to my garage and talk my snowblower into starting and clearing off the driveway. Yeah, it'd be great. I think it would take one of those long black sticks with the white tip, the magic wand. But we try to persuade people. And so as I thought about it, I thought, well, this is a logical thing for my blog, to call it Influence People. And again, it's not just about people, it's about the powerful everyday opportunities to persuade that are lasting and ethical. And we're going to take a quick look at that before we dive into some of the 6 principles of influence that Dr. Cialdini has promoted. So why do I say it's powerful? There's more than 60 years of social science to back up the claims that I stand up here and talk about. Now, how many of you have read Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People? Okay, that's great. It's always nice to see so many people. You know, some crowds I ask and like 2 hands out of 20 go up. But it's an amazing book. Dale Carnegie was an astute observer of human behavior. He looked around at people who were a success during his lifetime, and he started to say, what's making them a success? And he cataloged those ideas, and he looked at his own life, and he came up with 30 tips. He wasn't a social scientist, though. And sometimes when people give you good advice, that good advice works extremely well for them, but may not have any bearing for you. But what we will talk about is backed up by 60 years of social scientists and behavioral economists setting up studies specifically to find out how people respond in certain situations. Now, I will say this, after this presentation, and if you happen to pick up Dr. Cialdini's book and read it, you go back and reread How to Win Friends and Influence People, and you will have a whole new appreciation for Dale Carnegie. Because when I say he was an astute observer of human behavior, he was extremely astute. Because so many of the things that he points out line up directly with the things that Dr. Cialdini and other behavioral economists have now discovered through scientific study. But it's powerful because it's backed up by research. And much of that research is from Dr. Cialdini himself. He has spent more than 40 years in the field learning about, studying, and actually even took 3 years off from his professorship at Arizona State University so he could go out and get jobs in places where people's livelihood depended on them influencing. Be it a car salesman, Olin Mills selling portraits, working at electronics stores trying to get you to buy the warranties. He got jobs in those industries so he could learn what they were teaching people, and then he was able to step back with his scientific background and say, you know what, we can fairly neatly put these into 6 principles that we now call the principles of influence. The next thing is every day. So it's powerful every day. And why do I say every day? Because there's not a day that goes by where you probably don't have human interaction. Even on your sick day where you don't get out of bed, I'll bet you get your phone out and you get on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. You might be emailing. You're probably talking to people on the phone still. So there's almost never a day that goes by where we're not interacting with other people. And if you think about it, at some point during those days, you make requests of people where you'd like them to say yes, you'd like them to do something for you. So understanding the psychology of persuasion has application for you every single day. Opportunities. Powerful, everyday opportunities. Anybody in here buy a new car somewhat recently?
10 years. 4 years ago.
How many?
4.
Okay, when you remember back to buying your car, did you happen to notice in the ensuing days after you drove it off the lot, did you notice that car more? Right, we're all familiar with that one, right? Were there really more cars of your type? No. It was just a matter of something changed. What changed?
My perspective.
Your perspective, your focus.
Heightened awareness.
Something that was there all the time came to the forefront for you. When I talk about these principles, because they describe human behavior, they have been around since people have been around. But sometimes we just haven't thought or known to recognize them and how to tap into them. So let me give you a quick example. With my company, we try to sign up new agents. So we actively prospect for those agents. And one of the things that we do, my boss will send a marketing letter on a monthly basis to agents, and then on a quarterly. Well, after we learned about influence and persuasion, we started to think about it, and we said, you know what, we are missing an opportunity. Because every year we had a set goal, a set number of agencies that we were looking to sign up. So we added one paragraph to something that we were already doing. And that paragraph basically said, Mark, the reason I'm contacting you today is to let you know that we're only looking to appoint 50 agents in our 35 operating states. To date, we've already appointed 40. We hope you're one of the remaining few that we appoint before the end of the year. So we didn't have to start a new marketing campaign. We didn't have to get training. We didn't have to do anything except say, here's something we're already doing. We understand something we didn't before. How can we take advantage of that? And we put in something that was true. We were only looking to appoint 50 agents in those states, and we had appointed 40 by that time. Later that morning, my boss comes over. He says, I can't believe it. I've already had 9 agents contact me. I've never had anybody contact me after I've sent out one of those emails or letters, and I've already had 9 this morning. Their behavior changed because of the application of psychology, something called scarcity. People tend to want something more when they think it's less available. And when all of a sudden they saw 50 agents isn't a lot, especially in 35 states, not even 2 per state, and you've already got 40. If I don't act soon, I might lose that opportunity. So as soon as they start contacting him, we now have new opportunities. But that's an example of something that had been there in front of us all along. So the powerful everyday opportunities to persuade. Got a picture of a smart guy up here, Aristotle. And Aristotle said, persuasion is the art of getting somebody to do something that they wouldn't ordinarily do if you didn't ask. If they're already doing it, you don't have to ask, right? So persuasion is making that request of somebody who's not doing something. Now, as smart as he was, he didn't live in modern times, and he didn't know about social psychologists and behavioral economists. He didn't know about the decades of study. So I would say that persuasion is the science of getting somebody to do something that they wouldn't ordinarily do if you didn't ask. Maybe in our terms as business people, it's best practices. But there are specific ways that if we choose to employ them in our communication practices, science tells us we will be more effective. So our powerful everyday opportunities to persuade that are lasting. Sometimes, done right, your attempts at persuasion can have a lasting impact. So we've got a picture of a guy up here. He's crossing the finish line at the Boston Marathon. Now, believe it or not, I do not look like a runner, but I used to run marathons, and I ran the Boston Marathon a couple times. I was probably less than halfway done by the time this guy was running across the finish line. But what's interesting about this, the reason that I tell you this about lasting is because a friend of mine, Judd, persuaded my wife and I and about 8 other people that we could run the Columbus Marathon. Now, when I was in high school and college, I was into powerlifting and bodybuilding. To me, the only place I ran to was a refrigerator, because if I ran any further than that, that burned calories that I wanted to use to get bigger and stronger. So when he said, you guys should consider running the Columbus Marathon, I didn't want any part of that, but my wife, she also was part of the persuasion. She said, come on, let's do it. We'll get in shape, we'll meet some people, we'll have fun, and I fell in love with running. So Judd never had to persuade me again to put on my running shoes. He didn't have to tell me that I needed to train. He didn't have to convince me to get in races. I started running 5Ks and 10Ks, half marathons. My self-identity changed. I became a runner, and I thought of myself as a runner. So sometimes your attempts at persuasion can impact somebody's self-identity to the point where it takes on a life of its own. So we come to the last letter, our powerful everyday opportunities to persuade that are lasting and ethical. So an appropriate picture here, flowers and chocolate. Tomorrow's Valentine's. But I don't have it up for that reason. I have it up because there's a wonderful quote from a book called The Art of Woo. An earnest and sincere lover buys flowers and candy for the object of his affection. So does the cad who seeks to take advantage of another's heart. But when the cad succeeds, we don't blame the flowers and the candy. We rightly question his character. Are flowers and candy good or bad? What? Yes? Which are they? Had somebody said neither? Why do you say that?
Because they're just objects.
Right. We attach the significance. So, when I got engaged, I gave my wife 24 roses. That was good. If you have to bring them to the hospital for a sick friend or a funeral, you don't feel so good about the flowers. If you're a kid and it's Halloween, you love candy. And if you're like me, I'm trying to lose a little bit of weight, candy's not so good. But we ascribe the meaning to them. The principles of influence, when you learn how people think and how people behave, you have an advantage. What matters is how you choose to use that information. Are you going to use it for the benefit of that other person as well as yourself? Are you going to be honest and truthful in how you apply it? That's a reflection of you. But the principles are nothing more than a description of human behavior. They just tell us how people typically respond in certain situations. So that's the powerful everyday opportunities to persuade that are lasting and ethical.